Hi everybody, my name is Deb and I'm going to be the instructor for the plein air workshop that I am teaching at a couple of folk schools around the area here in the Midwest. And so this video is for people who are either interested in taking the class or who have signed up for it, and who might be wondering what kind of equipment you need, what kind of equipment you would prefer. If you have not done plein air before, you are going to need a couple of things. So I'm going to show you a couple different setups to show you your options, and I'll talk about pros and cons, and you can see what looks like it might be the best option for you. So I'm going to start with the setup for if you are painting either with acrylics or oils, because it's different if you're doing watercolors, and I'll do that later. So I'm going to start with acrylics and oils, and you're going to need what we would call a field easel, and there's a couple different options for that. Actually, there's a surprising number of options for that, but the kind of entry point for it in terms of cost and everything is what we call a French easel, which is what I've got right here. It's a big wooden box, and it's all folded up right now, and it's gonna open up into an easel and a holder for most of your supplies. So I'm going to show you how that goes together, and it's a little bit involved and it takes some getting used to, but I'm going to kind of come in and out just so you can see what I'm doing. So this section here on either side are part of the legs, and there's a wing nut, or there'll be a screw down here. You have to loosen that quite a bit. And then this is pushed into here with kind of a spring release thing, so you can just give it a pull and swing it down, and you'll see that there's like a groove in here that leg fits into, and then you tighten the wing nut back up again, and that's going to hold that in place. So I'm going to do that for a second, and I'm going to do it on both sides, and you can see this is where it gets a little awkward to do it while you're standing up. We usually kind of end up sitting and half standing on your head to put this together, but you get pretty quick at it as you use it a lot. So you put that in, make sure it's down, loosen the other one, and pop it off, and then I'll fast forward to the next step here. Okay, so now you've got your two legs secured here. The next thing you're going to do is pull this piece out. This is the third leg. This is like a three-legged system. This pulls out same way. It's kind of on a spring-loaded thing, and it pulls up. And then there's another piece here that swings out. And there's your third leg. And there's a nut there to tighten. And then there's one more screw here that you can pull out to make the full length. Tighten that down. Now you have three legs, but two are much shorter. I'm going to back up now so you can see the whole thing. So now you can rest this on the ground using that front leg, and you've got screws here that slide this leg out the rest of the way, and slide this leg out the rest of the way. Now you have three legs that are ready to go. All right, so it's not too bad. You get used to it. And so now you have this box, and this is now going to open up and turn into your easel. So there are screws on either sides of these bars. You loosen those, and there's buckles there to undo too. And that pushes this up. And when you are painting, you actually want your easel to be pretty much vertical. So it's going to come up pretty high. You tighten that back down again. Now, I move this a little bit here. Now, actually, I'm going to move it some more. So now you can see this is where you will set your canvas to paint. You now also have this drawer pulls out, and French easels come with a palette inside of them. And actually, I'm going to pull this out on this side so you can see it. So this is a drawer that will hold brushes, paints, a lot of things that you might need. And then here's your palette that fits right inside there and stays inside the easel when it's all packed up. So you can have, it's pretty self-contained. You have an option with your palette. Some people like to hold it. I like mine to set down, and so I set it down on the drawer crossways like this, and it's very secure. And what I do is I take two clamps. These are pretty strong, like alligator clamps, I think they're called. And I put one through the thumb hole here in the palette where it's sitting. I see the edge of the drawer in there, and I set one there, and then I set the other one against the edge of it right here. That way the palette can't get blown off if it's a windy day. It's very secure right there. So the only other thing is when you're setting the actual easel part up, it will depend on the size of your canvas that you're working on. Of course, we tend to work fairly small. For plein air, certainly to start out with, you're going to want to work small. So this is super adjustable. So there are screws down here that let this bottom shelf go up and down. And you want to work with your canvas at pretty much eye level. So you're going to want to raise that up. I'm tall, so I take it pretty high up. And then on the back of this, there's one more little screw, and that's what lets this thing adjust up and down. And so you set your canvas here and you push this down on top of it and you tighten it up, and then you're good to go. So that's a really nice setup. What I do is I have a I'll just continue with the setup here since I've got this all going. This is my container of thinner that you will use for oil paints. You would need a container for water if you're using acrylics. I set that right here up against that clamp because then it's kind of tucked out of the way and pushed up against something. Again, if it's a windy day, it's not going to go anywhere. And then this cool little contraption is a clip that holds brushes on the inside. And I can put links for everything below, but I set this right here, and my brushes go into here so that they're always here. I'm right-handed. And then you have to have a garbage bag because you're going to be using paper towels or rags to clean off your brushes while you work. So I take that and I tie it to this back little brace right there and have it open. And then that's right there for me to throw everything in. My brushes are here, my thinner is here, and then the other thing you're going to want is, and this is specifically for if you're painting with oils, um, and this is again the way I set it up. You know, different people do it different ways, and you will find what way works for you. So I use these blue shop rags, I think they're called. They're like really, really heavy duty paper towels. So I always have a stack of them back here so that they're just within reach for me. And then I and you should wear a glove. This is for if you're working with oils. This is because of the thinner. This is because of the thinner in here that you're going to you don't want to really be handling a lot with bare skin. So you've got that. So I hold my rag in this hand with the glove, so it's protected. This hand is my brush hand, and so it doesn't really get dirty. But so as I'm working, I clean my brush off with this, and I might, clean my brush off in the thinner and wipe it off like this. So this is going to get dirty real fast, and this is what you're going to throw out and pick up a clean one as you go. You can do the same setup with acrylics. You wouldn't need a glove because you're working with water, but same thing, a container of water. You can have your brushes there. The issue with acrylics, of course, is that they dry super fast. So I cannot highly recommend enough using a slow drying medium. There's different ones, all the brands that make paints also make that. And you can just get that along. You mix it in with your paints on the palette, and it slows down the drying time by sometimes hours, depending a little bit on the weather, but it's going to make them act more like oil paints in terms of how long you have to work with them, both on the palette and on your canvas, which is very nice because you can do more work with blending and things like that. So anyway, because the brushes, though, the paint and the brushes will be drying out faster, I recommend having a small bucket or another cup of water that you will need to put somewhere. You could put it back in behind here or on the ground, that your dirty brushes go into that to keep them wet, so that they won't petrify while you're, maybe working with another brush. Okay, so that is your basic French easel setup. Like I mentioned, the French easel is going to be probably the least expensive option in terms of a field easel for oils or acrylics. Um, I've had this one for a couple years, and I believe I spent maybe around $120 for it. But if you go on the Facebook Marketplace or eBay, you can often find used ones for a lot cheaper, because people sometimes, get one and then they end up not using it a lot. So you can definitely, I highly recommend checking that out. Um, the downside of the French easel is, although it is a very complete thing and it is super stable in wind, it is kind of big and heavy and clunky, just in terms of how far you might have to carry it, depending on where you're going to go. Your local park, roadside vista kind of thing, you're good to go. I use this all the time, but if you're going a mile or two down the trail to set up, this is going to get pretty heavy. Um, a lot of them do come with little D-rings up at the top here, and they come with a straps, like a shoulder strap, so that would help. But it is pretty heavy, and you do have lighter weight options, so you can consider that as well. So I'm going to move this out of the way, and then we're going to take a look at the next one. Okay, so your next category of things that you can use for field painting, again, this is for oils or acrylics, is what we call a pochade box. It's a French word, and it's Pochade, pochade. And if you Google that, you will find about 100,000 different designs of box. It's people get real creative. They want different things. Some are built for oils, or there are actually some built for watercolors, but there are smaller versions that I'm going to show you for that. This one is kind of, I would say, a medium size in terms of how they come. Some are bigger than others. But this one, a box like this, is not quite as complete as the French easel in terms of what you need to bring along in addition to this. As you can see, it's literally a box. So the first thing you need is a tripod. And this is not a special tripod. It's just a camera tripod, which a lot of people already have. And most boxes come with a screw, or the plate on the bottom for you to put the camera shoe into, so that you just clip it in and it holds it right on the easel. So I'm going to do that before we go on, so I don't have to hold it anymore. One moment. There we go. And you can see there it is. So couple of things just with regards to the tripod itself, because you probably know there's a million of those kinds of things out there. You want something pretty sturdy, so don't go super cheap, but you can go crazy expensive too, and you really don't need to. This tripod was considerably less than $100. I bought it this year because I wanted a new one. Couple of things to look for is the weight bearing capacity of it. It'll tell you that, and also how high it will go. Consider how tall you are. Like I had mentioned, I'm 6 feet tall, so I needed one that was going to go up pretty high, because you, again, want to be working at eye level. One thing that I really like about this one is that once I have the legs set up, it has a little level on it, so I can see if I've got it level. This type of thing, the legs are super adjustable. If you're standing on a little bit of an incline, you can adjust them lower, to get them to level, and that's kind of nice. One thing this has that is quite important, actually, and that you might not think of, I'm going to come a little closer. Right down here, you see there's a hook. You can hang something heavy from that hook if it's a windy day, and that will help stabilize the whole setup. This is not quite as stable as the French easel. So you can take a bag and fill it with dirt, whatever, and just hang it from there, and that will really help stabilize the whole thing while you work. The other thing I really like about this is it has a crank on it, so that once I have the legs set, I can like kind of make small adjustments, taking it up and down just with the little crank handle. And I kind of like that just because that way I can fine tune it without having to mess with the legs all over again. So those are a couple of things for you to consider with your tripod. And so now we get to the box itself, and it opens up kind of just like a laptop almost. I'm going to come a little closer so you can see the box itself. So it's just there's a latch here that comes undone. This particular one, this is like I said, you're going to find a million different designs. This one has a piece that is held on the top by magnets, and so that comes off before you open it. And then there are 3 screws on this side, and that's all there is, and it opens up. And then this piece that you took off the top, again, there's a couple of magnets here on the side, and you drop that in, and now you have a little shelf to hold. This is where I hold my container of thinner, and I tend to set my palette knife down and stuff like that too. You hold this because this is just really floppy. The screws that come loose on the side push forward, and you tighten them down. And there you go, like that. And then there's 2 screws on the back here that control these sliders again. Let's turn it so you can see it. There we go. So this is where your canvas is going to go, and there are screws on the back here that allow these both to slide up and down again. Up, take it up to eye level, and then depending on the size of your canvas. This one is more limited as far as the how big a canvas it can hold, but it can hold an 11 by 14, probably a little more than that, and that's as large as I would ever want to go for plein air myself. So for me, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so that's your basic setup for that. And then I'm gonna tip him forward just for a second so you can see the palette in here, which is built in. This is a piece of glass that you put your paints on and mix and then scrape that clean when, in between sessions. So, but again, you can see you can travel with the paints in here. This doesn't store tubes of paints, but you can have paints on your easel if they're if they're oils and aren't going to dry out, and these have been on here for a week, and you can kind of set it up at home before you go out, and you can close the box up and it doesn't get them. So that's that. So these boxes, like I said, come in a million different designs, a million different sizes, different ways of working. The downside to this kind of box is that you have to carry a fair bit of stuff with you because it's not self-contained in here. I do the same thing with this box. Here's my brush clip that goes on the side. I tie my trash bag to the easel down here. And then, so my brushes, my trash bag, my thinner goes here, my palette knife will live there as well. You can see this is a little, less stable. That is because of the tripod. I sacrificed weight and price a little bit for stability. I have a big, huge tripod that like I could paint in an earthquake and it wouldn't move, but it's way too heavy for if I have to carry it any distance. So I needed a lighter one. And all I do is I've painted on this several times so far. It's fine. I kind of hold it with a thumb here if I'm like really pushing around just to kind of stabilize it. But some people that might freak them out. You might want something a little more solid. But you make your choices and you work with it and you see how it goes. So yeah, you're gonna have to carry some extra things. My stack of paper towels and things goes at my feet because there's no place for it here. So there's a little more carrying stuff along. I carry a bag that has my paper towels, my tubes of paint, if I need extra thinner, which I normally don't, but that kind of thing. And it's same thing if you were doing the setup with acrylics, you would do the exact same thing. You would just swap out the thinner for the oils. One of the nice things about this is that it is much lighter weight than the French easel. It packs up much smaller, fits in a day pack. You can get these tripods. This tripod folds down pretty small. It also fits in my day pack. So I can get the whole kit, everything, even with all the extra stuff I need to carry into a day pack. Much more comfortable for going down the trail. I'm going to be doing a trip up into some mountains next year, and so this will be definitely the kit that I bring for that. Um, the downside to this, along with just the fact that it's less self-contained, is the price. When you Google these and you start seeing, oh, how many different designs there are, you're going to also start looking at the jaw-dropping prices of these. I have had this one for a really long time, so what I paid for it kind of is irrelevant, but this box is still available on the market and it goes for about $250. Um, and it's a good design. I like it quite well. There's very little that I would want to change about it. But some of them really are just a box. Like they don't have a side shelf like this. And they are still up in that neighborhood and higher, frankly. So if you've never done plein air before, and if you're not sure you're going to want to continue to do it, this might be more of an investment than you are really ready to do. Again, it's really going to depend at the beginning stages of how far you might have to carry something. Um, and so you make your choices. So this is called the pochade box or pochade box, and it's again acrylics or oils. And now I will pull out the completely different kit for watercolors, which is going to be the lightest and smallest of them all, and least expensive. So I'll be right back with that. I'm back. Actually, I forgot to mention one thing about the thing about these boxes is that because they detach from the tripod, and most of them, let me pull this off here. Oh, yeah, here. Okay, there we go. Most of them have little feet on the bottom. And so you could set it on a table to work with, or frankly, you could sit in a chair and set it on your lap. So the versatility of this one is pretty, really very nice compared again to the French easel where it is what it is. So I wanted to mention that one other option that you can way of using this kind of thing. Okay, we're back. We're going to do watercolor now. And so this is the simplest way to do watercolor outside is actually even without an easel. You just find a place to sit, a picnic table, a bench, a wall, sit on the ground if you like, and just work off of your lap. And I've done that lots and lots and lots. But if you want to, do it a little more formally, do it in a workshop like we're going to be doing where there isn't necessarily going to be places to sit, or where if you're going to be going places there won't be to sit, and you prefer to stand while you work, you're going to need an easel. So this is specifically a watercolor easel, and I'll show you why. This is built in. It's not a camera tripod. The tripod is part of the easel. So what it's got, instead of the plate here where it clips in, it's got this contraption that flips up this way, because with watercolors you want to work vertically, or sorry, horizontally, obviously. This slides over, and this is going to become your working surface. This opens up, and this opens up. Now, here's your working surface here, and there's a couple ways to do it. It does come with a little shelfy thing which connects down here like this, and that has a spot. It's got actually a little thing here to hold brushes. It's got little holes in it. It's got a hook here for you to hang your trash bag on, and it's got a very small shelf here where you could put brushes and things as well. I do make use of this. My one complaint about this tripod is the narrowness of this shelf, but I just learned you can buy these. They're kind of universal, and you can buy them that are 4 inches wide, and so I'm going to get one of those, and then I think I'm just going to be very happy with this particular setup. So you have a couple options now as far as putting in your work surface. One is to use what we call a watercolor paper block. This is like a tablet of watercolor paper sheets, but it's glued all the way around the edges so that the pages won't flip up in the wind. It will stay put. It also won't buckle as you paint on it. And the only spot, I'll show you here, way up here, there's one spot that's not glued. And so you paint your painting, and when you're done, you slip a palette knife into there, and it's kind of like held by, I don't know, like rubber cement or something. So you slide that palette knife all the way around, pull it off, and then work on the next one. So if you're using a block like this, you can set it in kind of like you would set in a canvas, where you would just clamp it in here between these two things. And these block comes, I've got a really big one, depending how you want to work, you can clamp it in there and you can work like that. Um, which these clamps kind of get in the way. They're not the best for that, and it's a pretty small thing. So what I actually prefer to do instead of that is I take the sheets out of the block separately, and I use a drawing board or a sketch board like this. You can get them different sizes. In fact, I'm looking for one that's a little bit smaller. And you can take your piece of paper and tape it down here. I have a painting on there already, actually, because I was at a studio session a couple weeks ago. But this will slide into here now. And I'm going to just tighten this up just so it stays put. And what's nice about this is it kind of gives you a tabletop surface, because your paper is not likely to be this big. And so then you can set, I always carry this little collapsible water jug. I can set that right there. I work with a sponge to dry off my brush, or to control how much water I have on my brush, so that I don't have to use paper towels all the time. I can set that right there. I always carry a little rag just to clean off dry off my hands or whatever. And so this is much more, just, I don't know, just feels more comfortable to me as far as a working surface goes. And when I'm working with watercolor, you're going to find, here's your fun Google thing again, Google watercolor travel kit. And again, you're going to find a million of them, and they're so fun. Like, collecting watercolor travel kits is kind of its own hobby. I have a bunch of them. But honestly, this is kind of my favorite. It's just a little plastic fold up palette that has wells in it that I squeeze the colors into from tubes. But a lot of them come already with the paint inside them in what we call half pans. Winsor Newton does those. Several other brands do them. They're all good. The most important thing you need for this setup is that you need enough surface to mix your colors in. I've seen people with like a couple little inches of mixing space, and it just doesn't work. Do not get one of those round palettes with the, looks like a deviled egg holder with all the little round wells, and then there's a mixing space in the middle about this big. It won't work. You got to get one single palette that holds all your colors and gives you enough space to work with. And you can clean these off as you go. That's the other good use for the sponge. You can clean it off and, give yourself a clean surface. But that's what I see the biggest issue with people coming out for the first time, is they don't have a serviceable palette. This one, the little thumb thing flips out, and so I do hold this one for watercolors. Or, sometimes if I'm working fairly small, I can set it on there too, and then I've just got a tabletop. But yeah, I like this one, but there's a lot of them. I can put some links in the thing below too, and you can just go nuts. They're lots of fun, and some of them are really tiny. It's just very fun. So this, if I'm not working this, I can actually balance my water cup right here on this little thing, and it actually works pretty well. So that's your watercolor setup. That's my recommendation for your watercolor setup, for being able to work standing up. The easel is very lightweight. It's I've been happy with the stability of it. With watercolors, it's not as aggressive of a way of working as with oils and acrylics, because you're not like, mixing colors with a palette knife. You just, like, with a soft brush and soft brush strokes. And so it doesn't have to be quite so heavily built as for the other things. So that's what I've got for you for your setup. I hope that's informative and helpful. And I look forward to seeing you come to a workshop and learn how to play outdoors with paint, because it is a wonderful experience and everyone should give it a try. Thanks.